This meeting is being recorded.
And the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning, and we have a lot to get through. So let's go ahead and call the meeting to order. So I do have one remark as I feel like I start each meeting. I would like to welcome our newest member, Dr. Diane Sequoia. So Dr. Sequoia, if you'd like to just take a minute or two to introduce yourself to the committee.
Before we do that, can I call roll fast to establish a quorum?
How did I skip that?
Okay, just really quickly. Ms. Plasky.
Yep, I'm here.
Dr. Lazarchev is absent today. Dr. Bradbury.
Here.
Ms. Laredo.
Here.
Dr. Payton is absent today. Dr. Sequoia.
Jessica, your microphone just faded out.
Oh, sorry, Dr. Sequoia?
Oh.
Present.
All right. Ms. Schiffelt. I see. There you go. Ms. Berber.
Here.
Dr. Sullivan.
Here.
We have a quorum.
I was so busy counting myself, I just skipped by the roll call. That's how my day is gonna go, I think. So I was already counting everybody that I knew was gonna be here. So again, I apologize for that. Okay, we've established a quorum. We're good. So agenda item 2, back to my remarks. Dr. Sequoia, welcome. So if you'd like to introduce yourself to our committee, that would be great. It looks like you may be having a little bit of technical difficulties and I'm not 100% sure.
Thank you. Well, I see my picture up on the screen. I think my microphone's connected. Can you see me and hear me? Okay, so
We do hear you.
let's hope everything stays stable for the meeting. Well, anyway, my name is Diane Sequoia. I'm very pleased and honored to join the committee. I'm a small animal practitioner in the San Francisco East Bay. Let's see, what else can I tell you? I graduated from Tufts University School of Veterinary Medicine, now called Cummings School of Veterinary Medicine in 1987. So I've been in the profession for a while. Let's see, I sat on the board of directors of CVMA, and I'm particularly interested in, on the veterinary side, legislation and regulation. I have other interests, obviously. I'm also, as a consumer, I've been a consumer for longer than I've been a veterinarian, so I feel informed consent and consumer protection is very important. And I also feel not obviously, that veterinary medicine is perhaps under-realized and appreciated by both the public as to what we do to serve society every day, varying from just caring from visible animals to public health, safety, and other things. So I have a broad interest in a lot of things, and I'm very pleased and proud to serve on the committee and hope that I can bring a lot to it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Any other committee member comments? Okay. So agenda item number 3, public comment on items not on the agenda. Moderator.
This is the moderator. We've opened the Q&A panel, which is what we will be using for public comment today. If you'd like to make a comment, please click on the Q&A icon on your screen, which looks like a question mark inside of a square. That will open a text box, and in that text box you can type comment or I would like to make a comment, and then submit that to all panelists. Comments will be taken in the order that they are received today, and each commenter will have a 3-minute limit. I will be providing a 30-second reminder when your time is about to expire. And then at the end of the 3 minutes, I will mute your microphone and move on to the next commenter. And not seeing any requests for comment at this time. Would you like me to close the panel?
Yes, please. Thank you.
It is closed.
Thank you. So agenda item number 4, review and approval of the April 21st, 2021 committee meeting minutes. Any comments from the committee?
I have a comment.
Yes.
I think there need to be some corrections on the minutes. I was not there, but in reading them on page 7 and page 12, Bonnie Lutz has been referred to as on page 7 in paragraph 2 and 3 as Mr. And on page 12, the next to the last, the very last paragraph, Bonnie Lutz is again referred to as Mr.
We will make those corrections. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments from the committee? Hearing none, do I have a motion? Has to be a motion before
Move to approve.
Who was that?
Jennifer, move to approve the minutes.
Thank you, Jennifer.
I'll
So-
second.
Second that.
Can we clarify
And-
that the motion is to approve the minutes as modified?
Yes, with all of the corrected pronouns.
Thank you. And Leah, do you accept that?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so Ms. Laredo approved with the modifications and Leah Schufelt approved or seconded. Any further discussion? Can we call for a vote, please?
Can we do public comment?
Oh, public comment. I don't know what I'm thinking. I just want to skip that. I apparently just want to skip that today. That's
This
why I
is
did
the
that.
moderator. I'll just start throwing the slide up there as a reminder. We've opened the Q&A panel for public comment. If you'd like to make a comment, please click on that Q&A icon on your screen, type comment, or I would like to make a comment into the text field and submit that to all panelists. And not seeing any requests, would you like me to close the panel?
Yes, please.
It is closed.
We're going to get through this, I promise. I normally do really well on that part, but apparently today I'm just going to skip right by it. Okay, now can we call for the vote?
All right, Ms. Pulowski,
Yes.
Dr. Bradbury,
Yes.
Ms. Laredo,
Yes.
Dr. Sequoia,
Am I supposed to abstain since I wasn't present at the meeting?
that is recommended, yes.
I abstain then.
Ms. Schufelt,
Yes. Yes.
Ms. Berber,
I'm sorry, did you say Ms. Berber?
I did, yes, sorry.
Yes.
Dr. Sullivan,
Yes.
motion carries.
I would just like to point out, Jessica, that your microphone is lower than Dr. Sullivan's today, so that's a first. I believe that we usually give Dr. Sullivan a hard time, so. Okay, moving on to agenda item number 5, which is the legislative and regulatory proposal regarding telemedicine. forgive me because this is such an important topic. I have prepared a memo that I would like to read to all of you and go over so that you guys clearly understand the depth of what Dr. Sullivan and I have done in our subcommittee. So as stated in our memo, which is included in our packet today, the MDC's telemedicine subcommittee is presenting the information to the MDC in order to approve the legislative and regulatory proposals. The COVID-19 pandemic has highlighted the extreme need for clarification of veterinary telemedicine practice. The DCA director's waivers of the VCPR may be expiring soon. So we believe there is an urgent need to get clarification of telemedicine practice in statute this year. Due to the looming legislative deadlines, if the MDC approves the legislative and regulatory recommendation today, I will present our proposal to the board during their meeting this week for them to consider for approval. The subcommittee recognizes the ability to provide veterinary care through electronic means is a valuable tool in many situations and for all populations. Access to care afforded by electronic veterinary services is particularly important for high-risk populations. The ability to intervene early and leverage the continuum of care afforded by electronic veterinary services are benefits the subcommittee is encouraging the MDC and board to consider. To resolve concern raised at the MDC's April 2021 meeting regarding the effect of the diagnosis definition in the Business and Professions Code section 4825.1 on proposed regulations for electronic veterinary services, and because veterinary professionals do not have a clear understanding or guidance as to the electronic services they may provide to animal patients, the subcommittee recommends defining these types of services in statute. During the subcommittee review, we found the statutory definition of telehealth placed within the Medical Practice Act. Telehealth is intended to facilitate patient self-management and caregiver support for patients. The Medical Practice Act provides that telehealth includes telemedicine as the term is referenced in the Code of Federal Regulations. However, those terms do not readily apply to veterinary health care. There is no other definition of telemedicine in the BPC, and the regulations supporting the Medical Practice Act do not further clarify this term. Excuse me. Since BPC section 2290.5 and federal regulations referenced in our memo do not readily apply to animal patients, and because of the fundamental differences between humans and animals in communicating and identifying sickness or symptoms, the subcommittee determined that to properly use telehealth in accordance with the BPC section 686, it is necessary to establish statutory provisions in the Veterinary Medicine Practice Act for the performance of electronic veterinary health services, including telehealth for animal patients. The subcommittee has included a legislative proposal defining telehealth, telemedicine, teletriage, and teleconsultation to establish the authority of veterinary professionals to provide such services. The legislative proposal seeks to address stakeholder concerns raised during the board's January 2021 meeting regarding the racial and economic inequities resulting in a lack of access to veterinary care facilities and difficulty for consumers to travel with their pets to veterinary premises. These legislative changes are designed to protect public interest and consumer safety and are intended to address social and economic disadvantages in rural and low-income communities by expanding the use of electronic technology and media to increase access to veterinary healthcare services for the benefit of consumers and their animals. The subcommittee believes it is in the best interest of improving veterinary care for consumers, animals, and the veterinary professionals to include the legislative proposal in the board's sunset bill, which is why I will be presenting our recommendation to the board during their meeting this week if the MDC approves this recommendation. Once the legislative proposal is enacted, Regulatory amendments to CCR Title 16, Section 2032.1 would be necessary to remove superseded and redundant references to telemedicine. I'm going to go over some of the definitions, highlighting some of the changes since our last version. Teleconsultation. This definition has been modified since the last version to include or other person whose expertise in the opinion of the California licensed veterinarian, and further clarifies a veterinary consultant provision to model the AAVSB guidelines. Telehealth. This definition has been modified as described earlier to accommodate for the electronic provision of general veterinary advice and education. Telehealth services are defined later. Telemedicine. The new proposal defines telemedicine as the use of electronic technology or media, including interactive audio and/or video, by a California licensed veterinarian to practice veterinary medicine provided within an established VCPR for the patient. The requirement to establish a VCPR to provide treatment complies with federal law and is consistent with other states' law and veterinary guidelines. To address stakeholder concerns that the current regulatory definition of telemedicine limits the use of technology in veterinary medicine practice and results in decreased consumer access to veterinary care, the legislative proposal included in the packet would narrow the definition of telemedicine so more electronic veterinary services could be provided through telehealth. Under the proposed definition, when a veterinarian needs to prescribe treatment of whatever nature for the animal patient's medical condition, this new telemedicine definition would ensure practitioners are in compliance with federal and California state law, and animal patients are properly protected by having a VCPR established before the treatment could be provided electronically. By narrowing the definition of telemedicine and establishing a definition for telehealth, consumers will have more options available to receive veterinary health care for their animals. Teletriage. The legislative proposal would define teletriage to mean the use of electronic technology or media, including interactive audio and/or video, to diagnose and treat a medical emergency as defined until the animal patient can be transported to and/or seen by a veterinarian. This proposal would expand the existing VCPR exemption in CCR Title 16, Section 2032.1, subsection F, which authorizes advice given in an emergency. Pursuant to CCR Title 16, Section 2032.1, subsection A, in order to treat an animal patient, a VCPR must be established. This requirement is consistent with federal law, other states' law, and veterinary association guidelines that limit the ability to prescribe and/or treat a medical condition. BPC Section 4826.4 authorizes a California licensed veterinarian to render necessary and prompt care and treatment, including dispensing and prescribing a dangerous drug or device to an animal patient without establishing a VCPR, if conditions are such that one cannot be established in a timely manner. To conform to the emergency provisions in BPC 4826.4 and ensure necessary and prompt care and treatment of animal patients, the definition of teletriage would include electronically diagnosing and treating a medical emergency. The subcommittee is providing a legislative proposal, also included in our packet, defining specific veterinary services that could be performed through electronic technology. To provide clarity, I'm going to outline these services for the committee. Telemedicine services. The proposal would authorize a California licensed veterinarian to further evaluate an animal patient's progress and diagnose and treat the medical condition for which the VCPR has been established. The limitation on the use of telemedicine is consistent with the AAVSB guidelines for the appropriate use of telehealth, as well as CCR Title 16, Section 2032.1, which requires a VCPR to treat an animal patient. The proposal would maintain the existing prohibition on establishing a VCPR by telephonic or other electronic means in CCR Title 16, Section 2032.1, subsection E, which is consistent with the AVMA Model Veterinary Practice Act as well as federal law. The FDA also recently reiterated that the federal VCPR definition requires animal examination and/or medically appropriate and timely visits to the premises where the animals are kept. So the federal VCPR definition cannot be met solely through telemedicine. Telehealth services. These services would include a general or preliminary diagnosis of the general health of the animal patients using a virtual exam of the animal patient. The provision was crafted carefully to conform with the existing definition of diagnosis, which is defined to meet the act or process of identifying or determining the health status of an animal through examination and the opinion derived from that examination. The new telehealth provision would specify the examination could be performed virtually in order to provide a general or preliminary diagnosis of the general health of the patient. This provision would benefit consumers by expanding the use of electronic technology and increases access to veterinary healthcare services. The proposed telehealth provision would not authorize treatment to be electronically provided. Therefore, it could be used without establishing a VCPR. The proposed telehealth provision would also allow RVTs and VAs to use telehealth to determine the seriousness of a medical situation and advise a client or client's representative of the urgency of the animal patients being seen, again, increasing access to veterinary health. Teletriage services. The legislative proposal for teletriage services would provide clarity in that teletriage cannot be used for treatment of non-life-threatening cases. It may be used in an emergency as specified. Advice can be provided through telemedicine in an emergency without establishing a VCPR. The proposal would increase access to critical veterinary care using the emergency provisions under BPPC Section 4826.4, Subdivision A, and authorize a California licensed veterinarian without establishing a VCPR to utilize teletriage to diagnose and treat animal patients until the animal patient can be seen or transported to a veterinarian. This proposal would also authorize an RVT to use teletriage in an emergency. So, if this legislative proposal ultimately is enacted, the telemedicine provisions in CCR Title 16, Section 2032.1 must be updated to reflect the new statutory provisions. The attached regulatory proposal is provided for your consideration as intended and is intended to be submitted as CCR Title I, Section 100 rulemaking for expedited enactment. Section 100 allows the board to add to, revise, or delete regulatory text without complying with the usual rulemaking procedures under Article 5 of the Administrative Procedures Act, as long as the change does not materially alter any requirement, right, responsibility, condition, prescription, or other regulatory element of any CCR provision. Today, the subcommittee is requesting the MDC entertain a motion to recommend to the board submission of the legislative proposal to the California State Legislature to amend BPC Section 4825.1 and add BPC Section 4826.3 and include the legislative proposal in the board's sunset bill. The subcommittee also requests, if the MDC agrees with the regulatory proposal, to entertain a motion to recommend that the board approve the regulatory proposal to amend CCR Title 16, Section 2032.1, and direct the executive officer to take all steps necessary to initiate the Section 100 rulemaking process, make any technical or non-substantive changes to the rulemaking package, and adopt the proposed regulatory changes. So I've highlighted your entire packet for you. And we've covered a lot of information. Would the committee have any questions? And I would like to go through and discuss any of this. Or Dr. Sullivan, do you have anything to add?
I do not. That was very clear and distinct.
Can I make that motion?
I have a couple of questions. This is Dr. Sequoia.
Go ahead.
On the first page, you mentioned in the introduction high-risk populations. Are you talking about human populations or animal populations? Page 1, introduction. First, second, third sentence, access to care afforded by electronic veterinary services is particularly important for high-risk populations. Are those human populations or animal populations?
Human.
Thank you. Okay,
Sorry, I
next
didn't.
question.
I know. I want to go back. I need to go back because I need to just proper protocol in that I don't know. I want to make sure, Jessica, we have a motion on the table because Dr. Bradbury hit the motion. So
I didn't hear a second.
I understand, but I want to make sure proper protocol.
Of course.
Yeah. And so I don't want to, just because of proper procedures, I want to make sure. I just want to make sure I don't ignore that. And it doesn't mean I'm not ignoring you, Dr. Sequoia, but I want to make sure that we follow rules and not.
I will second the motion so we can go to discussion if that's okay.
There you go. We have a second.
Yeah. It's just, yeah, I know we get in trouble for not following rules when we do things. So I want to make sure that we follow any rules. Either she had to withdraw so we could continue discussion, but okay, we have a second. So now we can continue. Now we can continue discussion, but thank you guys very much.
This is Tara. Want to be clear on what the motion is, because we have two motions that are possible. One is on page 11 of the memo to recommend the legislative proposal, and a second motion to approve the regulatory proposal. So, Dr. Bradbury, can you be specific about your motion?
Want me to read that? Yeah, no, I think that I like both of those things. I want.
Uh-oh, she's frozen.
So members, I'm also having problems. I'm wondering if you're not speaking, if we can turn the cameras off, and hopefully that will help.
So Dr. Bradbury, I can see you, but I cannot hear you. And you're not muted. Dr. Sequoia, if we could get you to stop your camera, if you just, the same button that you started your video with, if you could click it again, it should say stop video. Thank you. And then Dr. Bradbury, let's try again.
All right, am I on?
Okay, we can hear you now.
Okay, I just reconnected to my server. Okay, so I think I would like to start, I guess we want to start with the motion to recommend to the board submission of the legislative proposal to the California State Legislature to amend BPC section 4825.1 and add BPC section 4826.3 and include the proposal in the board's sunset bill. And then I think we have to do that motion first, and then the second motion goes into effect. Is that correct, Tara?
So let's go ahead and get a second on the first motion. Once we have public comment on the first motion, the legislative proposal, then I think the MDC should consider the second motion regarding the regulatory proposal. So let's do these two separate.
This
Sounds
is
good.
Diane Sequoia. I will second motion, the first motion that's just read and proposed by Dr. Bradbury.
Thank you. Do we have any further discussion on this?
Yes, I have a couple more questions.
Great, thank you.
For clarification, Diane Sequoia, can I go ahead?
Absolutely.
Okay. On page 7, as I read it, and Christy and Dr. Sullivan, I'd like to mention, I'm very impressed with what you guys did and the thoroughness, but I thought to make it a little easier perhaps for people who don't have your depth of knowledge, just making it a little clearer that telehealth was generalized and not individualized to a specific patient or group of patients, as in herds or flocks of production animals. Obviously it says it, but not quite so clearly for the layperson or the legislator. Next one down, telemedicine. Third line, first sentence, we're talking about the medical condition of the animal patient. I had to read it a couple of times, and then again, what I took as the meaning was a specific individual animal patient or a herd or flock or school or swarm of livestock / food production animals. So that's just a clarity thing. On page 8, we're second paragraph from the bottom, we're under telemedicine services. We're in the first sentence, and we're at the end of the first sentence, which is to be performed, narrowly crafted to authorize telemedicine to be performed only after the veterinarian has established the VCPR. I think we're going, if I'm reading it correctly, we're going back to the need for a an actual in-person physical exam. I don't know if you want to throw that. Veterinarian has established the VCPR via a face-to-face physical exam. That may be just, I don't know, we may not need that clarification. It's just, maybe we do. Page 10, last paragraph, I wasn't quite sure why the subcommittee is recommending moving that substantive amendment in a separate rulemaking. Is that a procedural thing? Is that why you recommended it?
Yes.
Okay.
If
Thank
that's
you
a
for that
short answer, yeah.
Okay, that's fine. That's great. That's it. Thank you. Thank you for all the work you guys do.
I do want to, I want to address the one where you, on page 8, it does, I just want to clarify, because it does say by virtue of an in-person examination. So I'm confused on that.
What paragraph are you in?
So under telemedicine services, line 1, 2, 3, 4, line 6 at the end of the at the end of the line, by virtue of an in-person exam.
Okay.
Okay.
I understand that it just carries down, right?
Yeah,
Gotcha.
right. So I wanted to clarify that one.
Thank you.
And then, okay, going back.
You want to look at page 7?
Yeah, I'm going that one. And Dr. Sullivan, feel free. Okay. This was where you were, this is the one you were talking about, the herd health. Is this the one you were, I was trying to keep up. I apologize.
I'm sorry, there were 2 on that page.
Oh, no, the telehealth, yeah, the telehealth was where you were saying it looks, I think we were keeping, this is also where we were keeping with the general language because it's delivered general veterinary health information. And,
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, fine. And then going down to telemedicine, the next paragraph.
This is Jessica. I just wanted to jump in really quickly, Dr. Sequoia. The memo itself is not is not the legislative proposal. The legislative proposal is starting on page 12 and 13. So it would be really helpful if you have any comments or suggestions for the actual legislative proposal rather than amending the memo that's introducing the proposal. Okay. Does that make sense?
That's what I was just going to say. I was trying to compare the two. I apologize because I'm trying to compare the two.
Gotcha. Okay. Then I retract everything. You have gone ahead and clarified. The only thing that was really a question in my mind was the high-risk population to being human. So thank you. And now, for next time, I understand that I look at the actual legislative language, not the memo.
Yeah, we try to put the memo in words for everybody to make it easier to read because we understand that sometimes the legal words don't explain it as easily.
Right.
I mean, it should, and it should, but it makes this how we...
I'll do my best on making the learning curve as fast as possible.
You are doing a great job, and I appreciate your participation. Anybody else?
Yeah, Christy, sorry, I have a procedural question too. Do you want us to use the hand raise feature or just yell out? Because I'm cool with yelling out.
You know what? I took I'm very absolutely fine with you yelling out because especially now that I can't see any of you.
Yeah. Okay, I have a couple of questions. You guys did an amazing job of putting this together. It's a lot of information. So I'm still trying to digest telemedicine, telehealth, teletriage. It's just a lot. It looks, I want to make sure I understand. It looks like we're actually kind of increasing access in a way because we're adding these definitions. Can you take me through like kind of scenario, like I was reading the emergency aid section 4840.5, and it says, you know, that an emergency is basically when an animal's been placed in a life-threatening condition where immediate treatment is necessary. And I'm trying to think about it from a consumer perspective, not as an RVT, but as a pet owner. How do I know what's a life-threatening situation? My pet is suffering and I'm afraid. So looking at the telemedicine, telehealth, teletriage, how would that scenario help? Just kind of paint the picture for me of somebody's at home, they don't have a vehicle, they can't get their pet to a doctor. How does this new proposal help them get access to care? Are they able to establish the VCPR in that way? Would they be able to have treatment prescribed? I don't know how they pick up the medication, but how would this help somebody who doesn't have those resources just to go to a vet in an emergency situation? Or Dr. Sullivan, whoever can.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, Dr. Sullivan, you could, I just totally cut off your name and said Dr. Sully, but Dr. Sullivan, you can chime in, but the idea behind it is to use it to assess the situation. So you may start off with one and end up in another and realize that it is not a non-life threatening. So you're starting off in one and you're realizing it is an emergency situation, right? So you're starting off with a teletriage situation and realizing that, okay, wait, and I take back my non-life threatening situation, but the owner may think it isn't. Let's start there. and you're doing a teletriage and realize it is a life-threatening situation and we have to change direction. So it's just being able to give them access to more information. So we're able to ask more questions and assess differently, and giving the veterinarian the ability to ask those questions and not get themselves into a pickle, I guess, because they can assess and triage better.
Okay, so essentially, for lack of a better term, it's untying the hands of the veterinarian to make that determination, whereas before they were restricted because this addition increases the ability to triage. Is that right?
I would say that's probably the best way to put it. Dr. Sullivan, do you have a better way of?
This is Tara. I have a comment. I just want to refer back to the existing regulation requiring the VCPR. It references telemedicine requiring a VCPR with the exception for advice given in an emergency as defined under 4840.5 of the code. So the proposed legislation effectively moves the emergency provisions that currently exist under the regulation and better clarifies it in the new legislative proposal. So effectively, we're not really changing much with respect to emergency protocol. I think I would say that the biggest change for this legislative proposal is providing for the telehealth, which is the general advice, which currently we don't really have that provision open under the regulation. But emergency services, we're just continuing the existing ability to provide advice over the phone or through electronic veterinary services that already exist under the regulation.
Which is why I was saying you're allowed now to, it's giving you it's giving you more access to gather information.
Yeah, I think that I understand it a little better now. I was just confused on the emergency portion because a pet owner might think something is an emergency, but the veterinarian might not. So I just wanted to make sure that was
Yeah,
clear. You guys did a
again,
great
it's
job
got,
on this.
thank you. It's giving, I think it's the whole being able to get more information and being able in the ways that we can get information.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, so we can go ahead and open this up to public comment.
This is the moderator. We have opened the Q&A panel. If you'd like to make a comment on this item, please click on the Q&A icon on your screen, type comment or I would like to make a comment into the text field and submit that to all panelists. And I am not seeing any requests for comment. Would you like me to close the panel?
Yes, please.
It is closed.
Chair, this is Diane Sequoia.
Dr. Sequoia, can you please mute? Dr. Sequoia, can you please mute? Okay, so now we have the second proposal.
Can we take a vote on that first proposed motion first?
Oh my gosh, I am really just out of sorts today and I apologize. So let's call for a vote. Let's start that.
Ms. Pulowski?
Yes.
Dr. Bradbury?
Yes.
Ms. Laredo?
Yes.
Dr. Sequoia?
Yes.
Ms. Sheffield?
Yes.
Ms. Berber?
Yes.
Dr. Sullivan? Dr. Sullivan, we cannot hear you.
Yes.
Oh, there you go. Thank you so much. Motion carries.
Oh my. I'm going to make it through. I swear, guys. I promise. Okay. Next. Next.
Okay, so now I need to make the second motion, I believe. Is that correct?
If you would like. Yes. But you're on mute.
I'm looking on the, what page is it? Different thing.
It's on page 11 of the memo.
I'd like to we recommend that the board approve the regulatory proposal.
Dr. Bradbury, you are breaking up. Would you mind turning your video off and then we can hear you?
CR Title 16.
Give her just a minute. There may have been a delay in her hearing us. Dr. Bradbury, if you can hear us, can you please turn your camera off? Okay, and Dr. Bradbury, we cannot hear you right now, so maybe if you could try reconnecting like you did before.
She's trying to reconnect right now.
We're almost there. It's early for all of us. That's what's happening.
I think there's definitely some ruffles in the bandwidth network today.
I know. Well,
So
we didn't want today to go
right.
perfectly.
Dr. Bradbury, just in case the bandwidth issues are on your local network there and your cell phone service is good, you can connect your cell phone and it will link your phone and your computer together in WebEx. And you can use your phone for the audio while using your computer for the video to see what the slides.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Hi.
Hi, you're back.
What did I miss?
Nothing. We waited for you.
Oh, thank you. Sorry. Do you want me to make my motion again?
Please do.
Okay. I would like to motion that we recommend that the board approve the regulatory proposal to amend CCR Title 16, Section 2032.1, and direct the executive officer to take all steps necessary to initiate the Section 100 rulemaking process, make any technical or non-substantive changes to the rulemaking package, and adopt the proposed regulatory changes.
Do we have a second?
This is Maria Sperber. I second.
Thank you. Any further discussion, questions from the committee?
Can I just make a comment?
Absolutely.
Christy and Dr. Sullivan, what a great job you did. And I really do think that this will help things. And I just wanted to thank you for being willing to keep going back to the table and doing that. And I really just wanted to thank you both. This is a much better, I think, proposal and really well thought out. And yeah, I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Let's go to public comment.
This is the moderator. We've opened the Q&A panel. If you'd like to make a comment on the current motion, please click on the Q&A icon on your screen, type comment or I would like to make a comment into the text field, and submit that to all panelists. And seeing no requests, would you like me to close the panel?
Yes, please. Thank you.
It is closed.
Okay, can we call for a vote, please?
Ms. Pulowski,
Yes.
Dr. Bradbury,
Yes.
Ms. Laredo,
Yes.
Dr. Sequoia,
Yes.
Ms. Sheffield,
Yes.
Ms. Sperber,
Yes.
Dr. Sullivan.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. We appreciate all of your input on that very lengthy subcommittee process. Okay, agenda item number 6. Ms. Laredo and Dr. Sequoia, welcome to this subcommittee.
Well, that's kind of a tough act to follow, Christy. I don't know if we can do that. So speaking of long subcommittees, we've been talking about this 20% mandate with the inspections, and I don't know if they're here today, but I had mentioned to Jessica, I think what was most eye-opening for me at our last subcommittee meeting was hearing about the inefficiencies of the internal structure of the different departments. So hearing from the managers who directly are involved in those processes and how it's costly to the board and also very inefficient was really eye-opening for me. So without going through the memo in great detail like you did with yours, we kind of came to the end where we had a suggestion. Obviously, we're going to continue researching that 20% mandate and seeing what we can do about that. But we think that merging the inspection unit and the enforcement units would, make a big difference. And it sounds like Jessica's already working on that. So I'm going to let Jessica talk about that. But hearing from the people who are directly involved in that process was extremely eye-opening. I had no idea really how things worked. We just see that we need to inspect and how many are done. I didn't really have a clear understanding of how the process worked. So I will let Jessica more eloquently explain that portion of it.
Yeah, and I think members, we've all talked about the inspection program quite a bit, but I think what was helpful, I know for Ms. Laredo, was hearing directly from the managers who were living it every day. And so we've asked Patty Rodriguez, who is the inspections manager, to speak, kind of give a little bit of background, an overview of what's provided in your memo for the history of the 20%, what the current process of the inspections is today. Some of the process improvements have been made, but just with the separate units, it's still creating quite a bit of inefficiencies. And so we'll hear from Patty, and then we're going to turn it over to Matt, who is in enforcement, and speak from an enforcement standpoint of some things that they've noticed and why they think that this is going to benefit the board as a whole. So I'll turn it over to Patty.
Hi, good morning. Can you hear me? Okay. As we've laid out in the memo, this the 20% mandate, this is an issue that's been going back, I mean, nearly 20 years. It was an issue that was brought up in the 2003 Sunset Review, and the Joint Legislative Sunset Review Committee has had concerns over the number of inspections that the board has been able to conduct, and that's been an ongoing issue for many, many years. The 20% seems like that just came out of maybe a conversation that staff had at the time with the committee, to where they said they would inspect the facilities at least once every 5 years. So it seems like that's where that number came from. But it's been an ongoing issue. The following Sunset Review, it was still noted that there hadn't been much of an increase in the number of inspections. And at the time, there were only a handful of inspectors in the state. There was only 5 at the time, and only 1 staff person handling the review that came out of those inspections. And so after ongoing concerns, then that 20% mandate was added to the 4809.7. It didn't make it a mandate. It just stated that the board would make every effort to inspect to meet that goal. But it's just been an uphill battle. The inspection unit was separated. It was kind of made its own unit from inspections, because up until that time it had always been part of enforcement as an enforcement tool. So the inspection unit was separated, and additional staff was added. It was only 1 analyst, and then it went up to a clerical support and an additional analyst. And during that time also, there were several more inspectors added to cover the geographical area of the state, because it was clear that with 5 inspectors, it was too much for 5 inspectors to try to do, especially if they were trying to increase the number of inspections done to, it would have been close to about 700 at the time. And while we got close to that number with an all-time high of 628 inspections, I don't think that anyone had an idea of what that workload would look like on the other side, as far as in-house staff reviewing all the paperwork that would come out of those inspections. So with that, I won't go over like all the details of how what the process was, but obviously it's not, we've had to come up with a better way to do that. It was just a lot of back and forth with the enforcement unit, especially with complaint-related inspections. And it's taken so long to review not only complaints, but complaint-related inspections, that by the time the analysts are looking at the cases, the inspection is now 2-3 years old. And so our inspectors are having to go out again for a second round to gain newer evidence, more current evidence, and to either substantiate allegations or to be able to show like what is the current status, because the inspections are aging as well as the complaint cases themselves. So just it's affecting, just we're not, our inspection program is not as effective as certainly what we would like it to be. And so it's the hope that with going back to where we started, back to enforcement, because it really is a part of enforcement, that as we streamline everything and there's less staff handling it and there's not this back and forth, that things would become streamlined and less confusion and, you know, less hands in the pot here. And we also have like our inspector in-house consultant, and so then we also had multiple consultants looking at these cases. So it's just trying to clean that up so that we can you know, make some significant strides here. I don't know if Matt, if you wanted to jump in at this point.
Yeah, sure. I was just trying to make sure my camera's turned on and everything. Hopefully you can see me okay. So as the memo kind of touches on, there's some areas that we identified between inspections and enforcement that were, I don't know if they're like main areas of concern, but just areas that we figured were causing inefficiencies. And so primarily one of the things was confusion between inspections and enforcement in terms of who's handling the case. So when an enforcement analyst would send a case for inspections, it would get assigned to an inspections analyst who'd kind of facilitate the inspection process and then have it sent back to the enforcement analyst once that was completed, if there's still standard of care issues to be resolved. And so you can imagine that it kind of created confusion between who's supposed to follow up on the case at certain times and whether that case still belonged to the enforcement analyst. And also for when we're running our reports, if the cases are in different people's names, it becomes harder to track them effectively when we run the reports. So just causing more time in all those kind of processes as well. One of the other things is just, you know, it's easy to lose track of the case when it's going from different analysts. And sometimes we'd come into situations where an inspection would be requested, and by the time it came back and the analyst got back to able to review the case, it had been over a couple, like 1 or 2 years. And for our purposes, the inspections are only valid for a certain amount of time before they need to be re-inspected. And that was an issue that we were coming into a lot, is that we'd get to the inspection report and enforcement, and then we'd say like, oh, well, it's been 2 years since this happened, so we need to go send somebody out there again. And as you can imagine, that's also increasing the amount of cost for each case. So our goal is really to have it where it's like as few hands as possible on the case. So one analyst, hopefully one inspector, one expert. That way we're cutting down on the time it takes to investigate the case and also the cost associated to investigating each case. And one other issue that we really want to touch on was it created a kind of artificial divide between enforcement and inspections when we had the two units separated, where, you know, it was easy for enforcement analysts or inspection analysts at time to kind of, you know, blame the other unit for why a case wasn't processed in a timely manner. Like, for instance, you know, they didn't get us the inspection report in time, or they didn't request the inspection the right way. So we figured that just having everyone familiar with the process and able to request the inspections on their own and review the inspections on their own, and then, you know, really take that case to the culmination and the determination of where it should go, being with one person would just make it a lot more efficient for the handling of it and the cost of it and just everything about it. So I think that's pretty much what our concerns are with the units being separated and why we think bringing them back together would be beneficial for us as staff.
One thing I wanted to add to members is, I'm sorry, I'm having issues. I'm gonna stop my video again. Okay, sorry. So one thing I wanted just to add on is with this merge, we do believe we can start up routine inspections again, and we'll be able to do that through using our office technicians because it's a lot less analytical to go through. And so the thought is we can start the routine inspections again, and the technicians will handle it for the most part. If they are all compliant or we need to send an educational letter, the technicians will be able to do that. And then if there requires additional action in the form of a citation or possible transmittal, then it would go to the analyst to take it from there. But we feel like this merge is going to be beneficial for the staff internally, also for the licensees who are inspected, because I'm sure the professional members can empathize with the frustration of the individuals who have been inspected and then potentially not hear anything for a year or two or longer when it comes to what has happened with that inspection. I think that there was also some frustration with the inspectors themselves. We would send out an inspector, and some of them we deemed high priority, and then they would do the inspection, and then we didn't have the staff to actually review that inspection report. So I think that inspectors had expressed frustration with that as well, and so they seem happy with this idea of the merge in order to address these inspections a lot faster. And I think overall it's going to save money because, and I think in the memo there's a section where it talks about the process when it comes to complaint-related inspections and how we have so many internal staff involved in one inspection and then up to 4 subject matter experts involved in an inspection, which, as you all know, is very costly. And so we really think that changing to this model, going back to how it was prior to the breakout, we'll be able to be a lot more effective. We'll be able to also track the status of inspections a lot cleaner than we do now. In the memo, it talks about how the inspection module and the enforcement module are completely separate in Breeze, and they do completely separate things. And so instead of continuing down that pathway, we wanted to just use one in the enforcement module, update the design to make it a lot more streamlined for everybody involved.
Well, I just have to comment that I'm impressed at the efficiencies that you have all been able to identify so that it helps each team be able to streamline these job tasks and be able to help. I mean, I'm just very impressed with you being able to do this. So congratulations to just identifying. I know it's a work in progress, but I'm very impressed with being able to identify these things to be able to help the board and not just in saving costs, but saving your sanity. So congratulations on that.
Can I make a comment? It's Christina. Let's see if we can. Should I turn my video off, do you think?
I will turn mine off and then we should be good.
Okay, let me know if things stop. I'm just going to turn mine off because I think my web is the worst. Okay, or maybe not. I don't know. I just, yes, I think that this is great, a move in the right direction. And thank you, subcommittee team, for spending the time to meet with them to find out that these things are going on, because I think it's really hard just to look at numbers and figure that out. But I was reading, when I was reading over the notes from the last meeting, you know, that we were, it's from, yeah, the last meeting and what the subcommittee report was, I was struck by something that I guess I didn't fully grasp at the time or think about, but there was, you know, a medical board and other places that do inspections. And there was a comment about the checklist and how long the checklist was. And the checklist further for public safety, and I totally get that, and I think that, you know, I feel the same way in a lot of ways. But I was also kind of wondering if the public safety might be served better if we were able to do more inspections, and so if maybe we were able to focus that list a little bit better, it might allow us to open up more inspections. So that was just one thought I had when I was reading over that. The second comment I had came from the reviewing the mandate, and that 20% is too high, and that the subcommittee was going to work on figuring out what a new mandate should be. And I guess I just wondered do we even need an actual mandate? I think that that was something that we created to allow us to put a line in our budget, if I recall correctly. So I don't know if we still need a mandate at all. So I wanted to ask that question. I had a couple more, but I know that by kind of loading them on, it takes away from answering the first one. So I didn't know if anyone could comment on those two questions or comments.
Doc, before you mute yourself, can you repeat the first question?
Sure. The first question is, could we discuss just a little bit further about the long list of and the checklist and how when we looked at that, it seemed very long relative to other inspection checklists, other groups that did this. And the concern was by lessening that list or reducing it, we would be compromising public safety. And do we think that that list is a truly a barrier to being able to complete more inspections? And if we do think that the length of the list is one of the barriers, would it perhaps serve the public better to have a little bit of a more condensed list and do more inspections? Did that make sense?
Yes, thank you. I'm just finishing my first cup of coffee, so my brain wasn't going to hold both of those questions.
I don't think I actually asked a question, so I'm sorry about that. I just kind of made this rambling statement.
It's okay. As far as I mean, that's something that's ongoing that we're doing, is looking at the mandate and looking at the checklist. We had gotten some feedback from our hospital inspectors, and they did not seem to collectively be in favor of shortening that list. We did look at some other options that we had mentioned at the last meeting about maybe doing a self checklist for veterinarians and hospitals when they renew their premises permit, to have something to reference. But the inspectors seem to think that each thing on there was very important, and they're related to sanitation, and anything goes to animal care is really important. And that's also one of the reasons that we're one of the only boards who doesn't have inspectors employed. We use licensees who go out and do the inspections because they recognize red flags that somebody not in the industry might not. So that is something that's ongoing for the subcommittee that we will continue to explore. But just, I mean, great management decision on Jessica's part, suggesting the meeting with the managers who actually do the job. We really wanted to hear from the inspectors who are out there doing those inspections. As far as the length of the checklist, I don't know that we compared it to the checklists of the other boards. It was mostly the mandate that we have that's so much higher than any of the others. So I hope that answered your question on that portion, as we are still exploring the checklist.
Yeah, that did. Thank you.
Okay. And then as far as the mandate, that is something, you're right. I did hear from someone that was a way for us to kind of put a line item for the budget so that we could fund the inspection program. Obviously, inspections are important, and there has been a lot of frustration on the part of the inspectors as well as the staff, as we can see in this memo. So that's another thing that's ongoing that we're going to continue. I personally think that 20% is too high after hearing from all of the other boards that we met with, but especially with monitoring these changes. If it passes today, guys, if we pass that, the change of the internal functioning and merging the units, we might see a lot more efficiency, and I think we will, but still, I think 20% was about 900 hospitals, if I'm not mistaken, and that's still a lot when we have all of the other functions of the board. So that's something that we're going to continue to explore. I don't know if Jessica has anything to add on that, but it's still a work in progress. But we are hoping that this one internal change will help to create more efficiency.
Well, and my concern is even with accomplishing a 20% inspection, is we end up right where we were before, is the results of the 20% inspection, there's follow-up to do with those. So it causes follow-up and lag in the system. And so it's not just the inspection that causes an issue, it's what happens after the inspection and all of the follow-up that has to be done with those. I mean, we just read.
And Christy, that actually reminds me of something that I was pretty surprised at, was we have Breeze that's supposed to increase our efficiency. And the way that the internal structures were with those units being separated, we couldn't even track the inspections properly in Breeze.
Right.
So there's just been a lot of difficulties in getting all of this.
So I have issues with there even being a mandate, and I don't understand why we have a mandate when no other board has a mandate. And I understand it has to be a line item, but why does it have to be a mandate? So I question that, Jessica.
I just want to clarify a few things. One, the proposal, the legislation that went through, it did not create a line item in the budget. So when you look at our budget that we post to every board meeting, there's not a separate line item for inspections, and it didn't provide the board any additional funds. All it did was basically let us go to the Department of Finance and the legislature through the budgetary hearings and tell them we now have a mandate, so please give us authority to spend existing money to pay for additional employees. And so it gave us the authority to spend what we already have. But when you look at the memo and the history of it, it's always been noted that the board does not have the sufficient funds to fund the inspections. And so rather than addressing the issue of the funds, we made it a mandate, grew the program without being able to actually support it. Because the only way we get funds, as you all know, is from our licensing fees, and those were not increased. And so this idea that it addressed the budget issue, it did not. And in fact, making it a mandate just made it worse. Even at the time prior to the growth, when the board was only able to do roughly 13%, they weren't able, it was noted then that they weren't able to really fund it. So it's been a 20-year problem with no funds. We're still at that same point. So, I mean, I don't think that the mandate is realistic. I would recommend that we would go back to make any reasonable effort to meet, if you want to have a certain percentage. I wouldn't recommend 20%. But like I said, this did nothing to address the overall issue about being able to inspect more. So even if we changed the checklist and did more inspections, we don't have the funds to do it. Oftentimes, I know that was a frustration with Patty, is in the past, they would basically send out, in order to meet the 20% mandate, they did a random selection, and then they sent it out to all the inspectors and said, here you go. But then halfway through the fiscal year, they were told to stop because we didn't have the funds to support it. And that was let alone with the additional staff who didn't have the time to review the inspections. And so this whole idea of it fixing the budget just wasn't accurate.
For the record, Jessica, I would like to say that's probably the third or fourth time you've said that it didn't fix the budget. I just want to say that. I've heard you say that before.
Should we do hands since we don't have our cameras on? I don't know how to do this. I don't want to interrupt everybody. Is it okay if I comment again since I am already?
I believe Dr. Sullivan was trying to chime in. Dr. Sullivan, am I wrong?
You're wrong.
Okay, I heard your voice, wanted to make sure. Okay, go for it, Dr. Bradbury.
Okay. Yes, Jessica, that is the third or fourth time. And I'm sorry, I mischaracterized it by calling it a line item. Yes, I hope we all understand now that that we don't get increased funding for anything. We just get permission to spend the limited funds we already have. But I know that wasn't what this part of the subcommittee presentation was about, and I'm totally in favor of combining the two departments. I think that that's a great idea, and I am in support of that. And then I'm just wondering if, as part of I am assuming this subcommittee is continuing on, and maybe we look at not having a mandate at all moving forward. So that would just be something I would like to potentially see.
Was that a motion? Do we need a motion, Tara?
This is Tara. think that if you want to send something to the board, you need to make a motion.
Okay, I would like to motion to send to the board this proposal to blend the two units. Is that correct?
Sorry, just to clarify, I actually don't need a motion to do that because it's an internal operation that I'm already delegated the authority to do. The intent of bringing it to the MDC was to get their feedback and let the MDC know that this is where the inspection subcommittee has gone and some things that they have done so far. But I think and correct me if I'm wrong, Jennifer, when you asked if that was a motion, I think you were referring to whether it was a motion to change to remove the actual mandate of the 20%. And that would actually need the motion because that's a proposal to change the statute. So that would be a legislative proposal that's not before you right now, but you're more than welcome if you want to make that recommendation now to go to the board. That portion of it would need a motion.
Okay, yeah, obviously we do want to, I think, sounds like we're all in agreement that we want to remove that mandate. We don't really have enough information to present to the board about creating maybe a new lower mandate, if at all. But I think we all seem to be in agreement that we want to try to get that mandate removed. So yeah, if we can have a motion on that.
Okay, I make a motion to bring to the board a proposal to remove the 20% mandate for inspections.
Do we have a second? Don't all speak at once.
Maria Sperber, I second.
Oh, I got Leah and Maria. I heard both at the same time. I'll take Leah's because I kind of heard her. So I'll say, Leah, you were seconding?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, both of you. Any further discussion on removing the mandate? Can we please open it up to the public?
This is the moderator. We've opened the Q&A panel. If you'd like to make a public comment on the motion presented, please click on the Q&A icon on your screen, type comment, or I would like to make a comment into the text field, and submit that to all panelists. Our first comment comes from Grant Miller. Grant, your line is open and you will have 3 minutes.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for taking my comment. I actually have several questions, but I'd like to lead with a comment that the CVMA is in support of the VMB inspection program. Patty has done an excellent job with this program over the years, in our opinion, and it has been very educational for veterinarians and very helpful in just making veterinary practices safer and better places. And so we really do feel that this program is of great value. I have questions and somewhat of a concern in terms of just removing the proposal for the mandate. And the reason is because this was all put in place to help secure the program. And Jessica, I may need you to step in because this is always a weak spot for me in terms of remembering how and why. But basically the mandate's there to protect the program, to make it actually be able to happen. I'm just wondering if Jessica could maybe just explain again why it went to being mandated, because that was done by the board just a few years ago.
I'll go ahead and try to clarify again. So first to your first point about it being extremely valuable and a great educational tool, we all agree and we all are committed to keeping that going. So it's not that the inspection program itself is going away, it's going to remain. And the ultimate goal is always going to be education over any kind of action. So that's the first part. As far as the 20% mandate, I do think that there was some misunderstandings of the difference between the budget and the funds. And I don't have any concerns that if we remove that mandate I don't think that would remove our ability to have this program. It would be a different story, I think, if we created this mandate and then at the same time increased the fees for the premises registrations to fund additional inspectors and additional individuals to keep up with the workload. Then that would be something that I think that would be helpful. But right now what it's doing is it created this mandate that we didn't have funds to begin with to be able to support it even when we weren't doing the mandate. I think, and I know Dr. Sullivan was here at the time, so maybe he can speak to it, but I think that it was proposed to the board that making it a mandate would help the board when we go to Department of Finance and to the legislature when we want a budget change proposal approved for staff. And so sometimes when you do a budget change proposal for staff and they're asking questions, they're looking at things of whether or not you absolutely have to have positions to fund something. And so potentially what could have happened is that the prior management was having trouble getting through to Department of Finance. And one of the things Department of Finance and the legislature look at is whether or not it's a legislative mandate. And so I think that the thought was, well, by making it a mandate, it'll help fund the program. But like I've said multiple times, that's not how the funds and the budget work. So while Department of Finance can give us authority through the governor's budget to get staff, it doesn't give us the money to fund the staff. And so I still believe that this merge will be able to allow us to actually do more inspections with existing resources. But if we want to do the 20% mandate, if that's the will of the board, we definitely need to increase premises registration fees once again.
Thank you for that. Does Dr. Sullivan have any other comments before I move on to my?
Not really. That is it in a nutshell. We were having trouble. We had a very small staff, and they kept telling us that because of our workload, we couldn't bump up the staff.
Right.
And so there were a number of issues that we were trying to address to do it, and this program was one of them that we used.
That's what I recall too, is that when the Veterinary Medical Board was having financial issues, they would go to finance and say, we're having these problems, and finance would say, well, then stop your inspections because they're not mandated. And everyone agreed that the inspections were one of the most important things that the board does. And so it was strategic to require the mandate because in a way it bound the hands of the finance folks in saying, well, they have to do it. So we can't tell them not to hire somebody. We can't tell them they can't do it. And so, Jessica, do you have concerns that we may end up in that situation again, where if the mandate's removed, they could say, well, this isn't required. And so therefore, you can't hire, or we're not going to support you hiring.
So I think the situation you're referring to is when we're becoming really close to the budget and you have to do what's called emergency cost savings. And it's possible that Department of Finance or even DCA fiscal office had advised when you look at going over your budget, they do the emergency cost savings. And usually, and so it's possible that they said that you are dangerously close to going over your budget, you now have to enact the emergency cost saving procedures, and that could end up with less inspections. That is a possibility. But it's my understanding that every year prior to this, they were having to do that anyway.
Yes.
They never had the funds to actually do it. So you can get the authority in your budget to spend it, but if you don't have the money to fund it, it doesn't really matter. And so, I mean, there's a whole slew of emergency cost saving measures that you can do when you're going close to going over the budget. And this would not be one of my top priorities to cut. There's a lot of other spots in our budget that we even just explained through our when we recently had to do a cost saving measures. Inspections didn't even get considered. So I don't have concerns about that. It's just as long as you have someone who's constantly monitoring the budget and the fund condition, I don't think that would be an issue.
Okay.
Can I make another comment? It's Christina. Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. I was also thinking that perhaps by merging it with enforcement, it also sort of safeguards it a little bit, in that it is in a separate program that gets halted. It's part of enforcement. So I think that also is a buffer to something like that happening. You could correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, I just remember, though, that it was strategic that we needed the mandate in order to safeguard the program. And so I'm appreciative of Jessica's analysis. That helps us to understand quite a bit, that, you know, there are options there. But another option to consider, two things, and then I'll end. One option would be to consider lowering the mandate to something that Jessica and Patty recommend. I'm sure Patty could probably tell you realistically what they think they can do. It might be down to 10%. And given that the number of premises does increase, you know, the 20% in yesteryear is, you know, really ambitious. You know, and as Jennifer Laredo pointed out, like nobody does that. That's like very high. So maybe it could be at 10% if there is value to having the protection of the mandate. That's something to consider. The other thing to consider is that if this is something that you want to do, the CVMA would support getting that into the sunset bill, which is a little bit of a break in normal routine, but it is the type of change that would go into an omnibus bill, and now is an opportune time to do it. So that's something that we could assist with and get behind if you wanted to try to get that in kind of in the 11th hour. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Dr. Miller.
So what do you guys think?
So real quickly, this is the moderator. We have no further requests for comment. Would you like me to close the panel?
Yes, please.
It is closed.
So my suggestion as the subcommittee is I'd still like to get the input of the full board. So if we could still present the topic tomorrow and discuss that, I think that would be helpful.
I don't believe this is on the agenda for you guys to be speaking on tomorrow.
Well, we have the MDC report on the agenda. So when you're giving the report on all of these things, I think it could be mentioned at the very least.
Yes, but I don't think you can take action on anything. During my report.
Jessica, Tara, is there any comment about that?
This is Tara. That's correct. Because there's no legislative action being contemplated and agendized, the board could not take any action to move a recommendation to remove or lower the 20% mandate through a legislative proposal at tomorrow's meeting.
Okay, that's helpful. While we're here, though, should we ask Patty what she thinks a reasonable number would be, just so that we have that information for the board when they ask?
Can I just jump in? Rather than putting Patty on the spot, the subcommittee does already have that on our ongoing tasks. So if Patty's prepared to answer that, that's fine. But otherwise, the subcommittee will continue to research that topic.
Yeah, this is Patty. I think it is something that we need to explore to come up with a reasonable number, and what that is, I'm not really sure, but I think Jennifer's right. We just need to explore it more.
That makes total sense. Sorry to put you on the spot.
That's okay. No worries.
I just also wanted to add that I think what we would like to do with the inspection subcommittee is make this merge and then monitor it over the next year and see what we're able to do, because we essentially need to know a baseline, because with these these changes that we're making, we are hoping to be able to do more. But right now, even asking what we could do today, it's going to change because we have a lot of efficiencies that we're hoping to realize. And like Dr. Miller had said, these are pretty good changes to put into an omnibus bill, and that happens every year. And so I'm not concerned with the timing, whether we get it in our sunset or we do it in an omnibus bill. I think it's definitely something that we'd be able to work with the legislature on. But I do think it's premature to determine off the cuff what the percentage should be. And just because we remove the 20% mandate doesn't mean we don't put another number back in, correct? Right. You could remove the mandate or keep the mandate, as Dr. Miller suggested, and make it a lower percentage. But like Jennifer had said, I think that's something that the inspection subcommittee is still reviewing and would like to monitor.
Well, and this is Maria. I just also wanted to, I agree with you, Jessica. I think the focus also should be on, doing the inspection is one thing, but as previously discussed, it's also what happens after the inspection. So I think that, we need to see how this change affects the complete circle of inspection and the enforcement and the education that follows the inspection. I think that inspecting without the follow through doesn't help consumers, and it certainly puts our practitioners in a very awkward position. So, I think that your suggestion makes a lot of sense, just to see how it goes with these changes in place. And I'm just we don't have to do anything at this point. And I understand the urgency to want to remove the inspection mandate. However, we're also in a process where we can do nothing and wait and see how the subcommittee and what their results are. We have a lot going on in this subcommittee right now. There are a lot of improvements being made. There's a lot of action happening. So to just remove the mandate is, it may be premature if we don't really know what's happening. Yes, we all agree it's high. I don't think that there's any of us on here that don't think it's high, but we don't really know what we're going to do with it. So we're removing it, but we don't really know why we're removing it or what we're making a suggestion to remove it to. So it might even be that we just say, let's pull back the reins a little bit and wait and see what happens with all of the improvements with the two groups merging and the efficiencies that are being made. And then let's make a better suggestion to remove the 20% mandate and change it to this, or remove it completely. I mean, that may be a better suggestion and a better motion.
So I totally get the whole not wanting to completely remove it and get more information, and I'm on board with that. I guess I had the impression that having this mandate in place negatively impacts several things that go on at the board because we're not meeting a requirement. And so I guess Jessica, can you speak to how having this mandate in place is affecting your operations, if it's negatively impacting you, or if leaving it in place for the next year while we figure things out doesn't have any impacts? Then, I mean, why would we change it until we have more information? So I guess I'm just trying to make it so that she can effectively do her job and not have, be in trouble, for lack of a better term.
Thank you, and I appreciate that. I think that the 20% mandate has, as we all know, has been something that the board's never been able to comply with. So the only negative right now is that it's an existing law, and we aren't meeting it. And I don't want to use only lightly, because that's a big deal, right? We're not complying with existing law. But I think it's something that we have open communications with both the Assembly and the Senate subcommittees. They are well aware of the issues that we're having and how we're trying to address them. And as you know, it's not an issue or a concern from the legislature currently, knowing that we have not been able to meet it. So I'm not concerned with leaving it in place while we're monitoring to find if these changes we do realize the efficiencies that we're hoping for. I think that's a safe bet.
Okay, so do I rescind my motion and we move on?
Yeah, you could do that.
We would have to get acceptance from Leah as well.
That is fine with me.
Anybody else have any questions? Anybody have any concerns with that?
I see that Dr. Bradbury has her hand up.
She's had her hand up for a really long time.
Okay. I didn't know she put it back up again.
We'll just leave
it. Might as well leave it up. I always want to say something.
Exactly. That's what I figured. So I thought we were good. I love it. Any other comments? Okay. We can move on because we already opened this. So we're going to agenda item. Thank you guys. I appreciate all of your work on that because I know that inspection process, I appreciate Patty and Matt so much. You have no idea. It's an ongoing process and I appreciate everything you guys are doing. So, and thank you, Jennifer, for taking on that, and welcome Dr. Sequoia to that. So, okay.
Can we take a short break?
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. We can go ahead if you guys want to return at 10:51. We can go ahead and do that. Okay, are we all back? I can't see everybody, so I'm hoping we are all back. It's really hard to know when you're
I'm back.
I know you're always here. So let's go on to agenda item number 7, update from the Complaint Process Audit Subcommittee. And this is normally Dr. Kevin Lazarsheff, and then Dr. Bradbury just joined this committee. So I am going to let her bypass this report because I'm assuming she was not able to participate in the last bit of it. And so I believe that Jessica is going to give us an update on this.
Yes, thank you. First, I'd like to really thank Dr. Warner for all of her work that she's done on this committee. She was on it for a short time, but she jumped in very quickly and provided a lot of really valuable feedback for our subject matter experts and for our staff. So we really appreciate her work on the subcommittee. We are really excited that Dr. Bradbury has agreed to join the subcommittee. She has been very helpful thus far, just serving as a board member and providing feedback for subject matter experts and things that as a board member, she has the experience and knowledge of things that work well and things that may not work so well that could be improved. And so she brings a wealth of experience to the team, and we're excited to have her on the subcommittee. And just a quick update, since we did have the turnover with Dr. Warner and Dr. Bradbury, and I know Dr. Lazarsheff has been extremely busy, as I think most veterinarians are right now. The subcommittee hadn't reviewed any cases since the last MBC meeting, but we do have a plan of a couple things. One is to have the subcommittee attend the training for subject matter experts if they currently attend with the Medical Board of California. The idea of having them attend is to really identify any potential gaps that there are in the training and create a separate training to supplement the medical board training that our subject matter experts are currently attending. So we're excited that they're willing to do that. There was one in July, but with the short notice, they're not able to attend the July one, but we are hopeful that they can either do October or later on in 2022. I think that's a training that Medical Board of California puts on for subject matter experts, not only for medical board, but for other boards within DCA, and they do it, I think, quarterly. So there's lots of opportunities for them to attend and identify any potential gaps. One thing that we did, though, note when I was meeting with the Medical Board of California's enforcement chief about something unrelated, she had provided feedback that some of our subject matter experts had provided to the medical board. And one of the main things that they had noted is that during the training, the participants are giving training materials, and in those materials, there's some real life scenarios dealing with human medicine that aren't necessarily beneficial for the veterinarians in the group. And so one of the things that they have asked for are real life scenarios that are more pertinent to them and things that they would see in the veterinary profession. And so that's one thing that we've asked the subcommittee to help create are these real life scenarios. So then the medical board would be able to disseminate that to the veterinarians attending the training, so it'll be more beneficial for them. And so those are the things that we're going to be working on over the next several months, and then we can report back at the next MDC meeting those scenarios, and then hopefully some information regarding the training, and then a review of the cases once they're able to get up to speed. So with that, any questions, or I don't know if Dr. Barber, if you just wanted to chime in on your thoughts of why you joined the committee?
Sure. I've actually kind of been focused on this as a board member, feeling like a lot of times some of the cases that we've lost have been related to perhaps just not giving the expert witnesses the feedback they needed or guidance, and just some concerns with that, and just I'm pretty excited to learn more about the process, to get my hands dirty and try and help in any way I can. So I'm super excited about it. And I think that, anything we can do to help with this process will be a good thing. So thank you for offering me the position.
Thank you for joining it. I appreciate it. And I know Dr. Lazarshev did say he would be attending the training in October, so he did let me know that. Okay, any other committee questions, comments, remarks? Okay, we can open it up to the public.
This is the moderator. We've opened the Q&A panel. If anyone would like to make a comment on this item, please click on the Q&A icon on your screen, type comment, or I would like to make a comment into the text field, and submit that to all panelists. And not seeing any requests, would you like me to close the panel?
Yes, please. Thank you.
It is closed.
Okay, agenda item number 8, future agenda items and meeting dates. Anybody have any potential future agenda items from the committee?
Just to let all members know, the next meeting date is October 20th, and we will be at that meeting setting the 2022 calendar. And one thing we do know is at the October meeting, we'll be doing elections of officers for the 2022 year as well.
That's what I was just going to say. Yep.
Oh, sorry.
Nope, that's I don't have to say, it's fine.
Is there any chance that we'll be meeting in person?
So that's something where we're looking at the logistics of it. We do know that right now there's not a bill to allow us to continue once the waiver is lifted. And so right now we are anticipating being able to return to in-person meetings in October. However, I think one thing to consider is the length of these MDC meetings, because they typically aren't very lengthy. And so weighing that with the cost of flying everybody to Sacramento in order to do a meeting, I think needs to be considered. But also, I think if we have people in Sacramento who want to come and do the in-person, I think that would be fine. But again, we're looking at logistics of it. If we do have individuals who are in Southern California and would also like to remain in Southern California, the only difference from this meeting and the prior meetings and then what would happen in October is that you would have to have a publicly noticed location. So if you are doing meetings out of your home, we wouldn't recommend that you continue that because we would have to list that location on the agenda. And so, like I said, right now we're looking at logistics of it and we're trying to make the best decision going forward, but it's definitely a possibility to be in person in October.
Thank you.
Any other comments, committee remarks? Okay, so if we can open this up to the public, please.
This is the moderator. I've opened the Q&A panel. If you'd like to make a comment on this item, please click on the Q&A icon on your screen, type comment into the text field, and submit that to all panelists. And seeing no requests, would you like me to close the panel?
Yes, please, and thank you.
You're welcome. It is closed.
And with that, a motion to adjourn. You guys all have a great week ahead of you, and thank you all for attending.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.
See some of you tomorrow.
Great job. Thanks.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.